This is Wendy Halley, and you're listening to Lucid Cafe. Hey, thanks for hitting play. I seriously did not mean to make that rhyme. It just did. I decided that it was a good time to bring my friend Marie Frohlich back on the podcast to talk about stress. Things are just a little tense out there in the world, so we thought it might make sense to sit down and talk about stress and ways to reduce it, each of us offering bits of information from our different practices and perspectives. If you don't remember Marie from previous episodes, she is a certified health coach and herbalist specializing in self-care and stress reduction. In this episode, she shares simple ways to reduce stress using diet, herbs, and supplements, and I share what I've learned about stress as a mental health clinician. And we both talk about how our anxiety-filled childhoods inspired us to want to have a different relationship with stress. So please enjoy my conversation with Marie Frohlich. Marie is back.
Hello, Wendy.
Hi, Marie. So I was thinking that it would be really good to dig into your brain a little bit and have a conversation about stress, especially given the times we're living in. I mean, you have so much knowledge, and I got to experience your knowledge firsthand when we were collaborators in some presentations, some workshops that we did together on stress. And I was blown away with the amount of really great information that you're able to share with these employees we chatted with. So I thought it'd be great to have you on the show and share this information with a larger audience.
Well, thanks, Wendy. As a health coach and an herbalist, for me, it's my major focus for clients. I really want to help people figure out how to balance the energy in their life to reduce stress. So many of us are going in, or were before the pandemic, in so many different directions, and focusing on how to balance our work life, family life. And we all have so many responsibilities with our families and our work, and how does that affect us physiologically and emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. And I like to use a more of a holistic approach. So it's always starts with diet and food and how that's affecting you, of course, but there's so many other inputs that affect your output, so to speak.
Why do you think it's important to talk about stress?
I think it's important because it needs to trigger people's self-awareness more about why they're at stress or what stress is for them. I mean, me personally spent most of my life in this low level of anxiety and didn't even know it because I'd had it since I was a child. And I personally think a lot of stress is related to childhood experience. But when you don't even know you're stressed and this cascade of events is happening physically, it takes a long time to recover from that once you realize that's at the crux of maybe what you're most concerned about for your body or your mind. And I was really surprised when I realized that my hypothyroid condition was related to anxiety that I didn't even know I had. And it took me into my 60s to, get that epiphany after trying all kinds of thyroid meds and going on and off of them and then having to go back on because I kept being so tired. That was probably my biggest indicator. A thyroid can do so many things. I think I was suffering from depression a little bit too. But when you don't have the energy to manage twins at the time and all that I was doing, working full time, one doctor told me it's like you're carrying two bags of groceries. all the time.
You mean carrying twins around?
No, but I was doing that too. But you just what you power through. Everybody powers through their stress until they get a big wake up call that says, "Oh my gosh, I have to do something." And fatigue is a big one because if you're not able to keep that energy up, your quality of life diminishes quite a bit. And it's the same with aging now, right? So for me, I went on this journey of self discovery. And then because of that self discovery around my anxiety, it propelled me into wanting to help others reduce stress.
Love it. I think you're bringing up an incredibly important point, and that is the lack of awareness that we have around stress and just how stressed we are. I'm fond of saying that I think human beings are 95 to 99% unconscious when we're awake, that we're just creatures of habit. And I've come to the conclusion, for very similar reasons that you have, that stress is a habit. Stress is deeply unconscious. And I agree with you 100% that I think we develop these ways of managing stress when we're kids, these coping skills, and we're just kind of doing the best we can with very little life experience. And then it works in an unhealthy way.
Yeah,
That
you have a story around that you could share.
Yeah, well, the story I have is, which I tell in my stress management workshop, is when I was like 7 years old, I created the belief that if I worried about stuff enough, I would actually prevent bad things from happening. And I think this is what happens to all of us. Like I was saying before, when we're kids, inevitably something is going to happen that's going to kind of rock our world. It's gonna happen. So for me, that happened when I was about 7. My mom got really sick and they put her in the hospital, and she was in the hospital for like a month, and nobody told me what was wrong. Back in those days, they didn't let kids into the hospital. So I would talk to her on the phone, and of course, I know when you're in the hospital, usually something's pretty wrong,
Yeah.
especially when you're in the hospital for like a month. But she wouldn't tell me what was up. Nobody in my family would tell me what was up. So it was just this kind of mysterious thing. So that told me, oh man, anything could go wrong at any time. And that was like my first experience realizing that in a really kind of conscious way. And so I did what I knew how to do, and I started worrying because my dad's a great worrier. So I learned from him.
How did that manifest for you? What did that look like?
Well, worry. I would worry about
Mm.
anything I understood that could go wrong at that time in my life. I would worry about it. So I would worry about if I did okay in school, if my parents were pleased with me, if I had friends. I would worry about if my house would burn down. I would worry about if my parents would get killed in a car accident. Those are all things that I knew that could happen. And I
What
became really good at it.
well, did it affect your sleep, your eating habits? How did it, affect your that worrying?
Oh, yeah. No,
Nightmares? I mean,
I became an insomniac by the time I was 9.
ah,
And then I developed an ulcer by the time I was 12.
wow.
So I did a really good job. The twisted thing is that it worked in my little pea brain, is that I did okay in school. My parents seemed to be pleased. I had some friends. My house didn't burn down. My parents didn't get killed in a car accident. So it was kind of reinforced.
Yeah,
And this is what I think all of us do,
yeah,
is that when we're kids, we create these coping skills and they get us by. And they're not really rational, these
yeah.
coping skills we develop. And so what happens when you do something over and over and over again? What does it become?
A habit.
Right. And how aware are you of a habit?
You're not.
You're not, exactly. So it wasn't until I was contemplating my naval in in graduate school for clinical psychology that it hit me. I worry all the time. And if you had asked anybody in my life, they would have said, "Oh my God, yeah, she worries incessantly." I didn't know it, but there were clues there. Things like people would tell me, "You should smile more."
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they were seeing was the weight of the world on my shoulders. But when they would say things like, "You should smile more," it would piss me off because they were hitting that nerve.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like your hypothyroidism brought it to your attention, just like graduate school brought it to my attention.
Yeah, there's 7 children in my family growing up with alcoholic parents and God, I mean, Catholic upbringing, fear of God, fear, fear, fear. And, we just took it in stride at the time. We called ourselves Lord of the Flies, as adults. But
That's kind of disturbing.
it was true. We were just left to our own devices mostly. And when young kids are left to do that, gosh. And we're all in this like, are we going to be okay? Is dad going to get another job? Are we going to have a house?
Wow.
And when you're doing that, you're not breathing. You're hyperventilating. And so you develop a habit of not breathing very deep. So what did I do? I started smoking.
Or you hold your breath.
Or you hold your breath. And smoking was my go-to for stress because it allowed me to take a deep sigh and breathe deep all that smoke into my lungs. And
Well, nicotine is also
yeah,
a stress manager.
yeah.
It's
It
not
was
not a good one, but that's what it does.
well, and my father smoked, so it felt like I can do that too. So I'm glad I put that monkey off my back years and years and years ago. But it's so interesting to sort of self-evaluate your timeline of stress through your life and really look at that and understand, now we really want to look at the source of our problems instead of just fixing symptoms.
I'll
Under,
drink to that.
yeah, understanding that source or getting to it, it's an adventure and an exploration for sure, and can cost a lot of money for some of us. But I think if you're curious to understand and get to a more balanced level in your life, you have to take the time to focus on you. And it can be a full-time job, but it has to be on your calendar every day, just doing at least one thing for self-care.
What are the things that you think someone should focus on when they're starting to explore their relationship with stress?
Well, journaling is good, to just start by trying to record in some way how you're feeling. One of the practices I've learned to do is called practicing presence, where you actually work with somebody who has you go into your body because we're so unconscious of where things are stuck in our body. I mean, we may think we have an allergy or some diagnosed problem, but in fact, when you take people into their bodies, they can find that it's all in their stomach, for instance, or it's in their neck. And holding a container for them to talk about what's happening in their body can kind of get to a focus of where the issue could be related, and then also where are the strong parts of their body that they need to touch base with to help the weaker parts. Maybe your legs are always been your strongest thing, you walk all the time, but you're stiff in your neck, right? So it's sort of a journey inward, a lot of what you do in some of your visioning work with people, Wendy, but this is just a one-on-one practicing presence, holding a space for someone to go in. It's one of the things I love to do with people to kind of wake them up a little bit. And it's just a snapshot of that day. It doesn't mean that's for all time the source, but it's a beginning to just really physically connect to your body. And I'm amazed just having been part of a Zoom funeral actually and having experienced my parents' death that just that example of grief and how it's held in your body, that we don't recognize how much our body controls how we feel because things get stuck in there and they can't get out. So if I've been anxious since I was a child, that's all been in my cellular matrix in some way that's created the cascade of events that started my thyroid issue. But I also have a really, tight neck.
Hmm.
And I had somebody tell me once it was because I was so curious because I was always putting my neck out, just looking at what's going on. I don't think so.
All right.
I mean, it can be from lots of things, but it's just you have to start somewhere. And my point is, even when you wake up in the morning, just scan your body. Where does it ache? Where does it feel, that you have you always just dealt with that little pain and not thought about it? And just go there in your mind and help it too. And also, I would just say drink more water, be aware of your breath. I have all these tips. Dr. Weil, Dr. Weil, you've heard of him. He has this breathing technique 4-7-8. You breathe in for the count of 4, you hold for the count of 7, and then you blow out forcefully with your tongue touching the inner part of your top two teeth, like you're blowing really hard, and you're basically relaxing your system. You're activating your parasympathetic nervous system, and it really works. On a scale of 1 to 10, how does it feel? Do the 4-7-8, and then on a scale of 1 to 10, has it reduced? I like to do it when I'm driving, to do a presentation or something, and I'm feeling a little anxious about it. It really chills me out. That's a great thing to do for sleep issues too.
Talking about breathing, I think that that's a pretty key indicator of stress, right? And like we were talking about a little while ago, when you're stressed, you don't even realize that you might be holding your breath or just breathing very shallowly. A recent book that just came out that I highly recommend by a guy named James Nestor called Breath. It's a I believe he's an investigative journalist and he collected all this data on how to breathe properly. I am just starting to read the book right now and the importance of breathing in and out through your nose and how unhealthy it is to breathe through your mouth. And also, he brings attention to the importance of the oxygen carbon dioxide mix in your
Hmm.
body. We think of carbon dioxide as a waste product, but it actually is really important to the functioning of our body. So I'm not going to talk about it more than that because I don't have any expertise, but I just want to bring attention to if you're listening and you want to check out that book, I highly recommend it. Good book. And
Yeah,
he's
sounds
been
great.
doing podcasts. I heard him on Joe Rogan.
Cool.
But I want to go back to what you were talking about your body. I really think that that's a great way to discover how stressed you are. Your body is brilliant at trying to get your attention. I always ask people at the beginning of a stress workshop, how does it manifest in your body? And people will say things like, I get a headache, migraines, I can't sleep, I sleep too much, my eating changes, I get stomach aches, I wear my shoulders like earrings, I I get irritable.
Yeah,
All different ways that your body is trying to get your attention. So I like the idea of scanning your body because I really think your symptoms are there to get your attention. I've said that before.
it's true. And it changes over time. I'm aging now in the second half of my life, and that's a whole other protocol focus for yourself. I've always thought, that people should create their own personal protocol for life because we're all bio individuals, we're all different.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you can do this on the computer now, but I picture it as a binder, with different tabs. So, body, mind, soul, what are you doing for your body? How are you moving? How are you eating? And then mind, who are the people that you want in your life? And how do you love them? And who are the people you don't want in your life that are creating a toxic exposure for your emotional equilibrium? And then spiritual, we all have spiritual desires, I think. That's a sweeping statement. But
A desire to feel connection in some
yeah,
way with maybe something bigger.
or just community. What is your spiritual growth? How are you being fed? And in my health coaching training, our big thing was that food is secondary nourishment, and everything else in the circle of life that feeds you is your first nourishment. And it goes without saying when you're not getting fed by your creative talents or people in your life, or your finances are off, or there's a whole wheel of topics, you're not getting fed by that, you might start overeating or not eating at all. So it goes hand in hand on how well you're taking care of your body. So if you're in a job you've hated for 10 years, your body's not going to be in great shape unless you figured out some other way to manage.
It's a great point. So do you have one of these binders
Actually, I have a lot of folders with
with your protocol?
yeah. Well,
Marie's plan for life.
it changes over time because it's sort of like pregnancy when you go through 3 trimesters. When you're young, it's and just awakening in your 20s to what, oh my God, I'm on my own. I have to take care of myself. What do I do? What have I learned? What don't I know? And
Well, you
then,
know everything when you're in your
oh,
20s.
that's right.
Yeah.
Can't tell my kids anything. And then when you hit more of experienced, like I'm married to a man that grew up in Denmark, and he in Denmark they say you don't become an adult until you're 50, and I believe that.
I question that myself now that I'm in my 50s.
Yeah, because we keep wanting to
Yeah.
go back to our youth
Well,
and you remember how free we felt, and then you're 50 and you're like, oh my God, I got to take responsibility for
I
for
think I was more mature when I was a kid than I am now.
Oh, you're going backwards. I love it.
Yeah.
And that's probably what we do when we age completely out. Yeah, babe in the woods until you're
Hmm.
30. You're in the woods when you're 30 to 60, those threes, Saturn return, all of that. And then you get up to a place where, wow, you don't care what anybody thinks, or you don't feel as affected, and you actually know yourself better than ever.
The
You,
crone
yeah.
stage. Why don't we talk a little bit about what people can do to manage their stress symptoms? Let's just assume that people listening are aware of their stress or they've decided they want to become more aware of their stress, so they're starting to pay more attention to their symptoms and how they're manifesting. It's like, okay, so now I know I'm stressed. What do I do about it? So what do you suggest, Marie?
Well, I think the first thing I want people to understand is what they're losing through stress. And what I found out is that you're losing minerals. Your natural B vitamins from your diet are going right out the window very fast. And so I don't recommend having to take supplements, but I would say B vitamins are just critical, critical, critical for balancing your emotional state. Because when you're not getting enough B vitamins, you can derail into depression and anxiety. I've found that out. And I think it's true for a lot of people. GABA is one. I do B6 every day because I've found that to make a huge impact on my equilibrium in general. The other thing I recommend is looking at seasonal dieting and what's in season to eat and really focus on right now with fall heading into winter and another wave of COVID, who knows, bringing in those dark leafy vegetables, collards, kale, for the mineral replenishment they give you. Try to make a vow to do something green every day, even if it's a powdered green to get in your diet.
So why do you think eating seasonally is important? What is it about eating the stuff that's
Well,
growing right now?
I think it's what our bodies respond best to, and the way evolution has worked with us over eons of time. When we were hunter gatherers, we would just graze on what was available at any given time, right? And well, there's so many reasons in terms of eating locally, supporting climate change by not having major fuel consumption to ship strawberries to you in the winter from California, for instance. We're in Vermont. So there's that whole piece. And then there's just the physiological need, like root vegetables now, sweet potatoes, so soothing and sweet, and they build up your root vegetables are like a liver. Your liver is your root. And so root vegetables support your liver. And there's all these theories and thoughts about how those connect. And for me, it's kale and collards. They're happy in cold weather. And so they're the greens instead of the light salads that thrive in sunshine. They're too light to give us the sustenance we need. So I move away from salads. I move away from smoothies. I go into soups with root vegetables and sauteed greens with collards and kale. I love, if you want to stick with salads, they're good. A really good massage kale salad is delicious, and it does make you eat slower. So, part of taking care of yourself is slowing down and not grabbing a quick fix meal and running on to the next. And if people could be more mindful about that while getting those minerals in, it's super good. Yeah, those are the big ones. And understanding the energetics of food seasonally, and how they affect you. Because if you're not getting enough minerals, you could get really irritable. There's lots of studies and science on how food now is affecting us that way. So it's fascinating. I know between the breath and controlling your breathing better, you can look at Chinese, Ayurvedic, and Western medicine techniques for all of those things. And what resonates for you? What's your culture? What did you eat when you were a child that, really comforts you? So I always,
Macaroni and cheese.
yeah, I always look at that and I think, don't ever let that go. It may not be the most healthiest thing,
That's good news.
but it's important to honor the culture you grew up with and not feel guilty about that. It's just you can't have macaroni and cheese every night, right? So it's that 20/80.
You can't.
No. Although I gave a lot of it to my children when they were little, I can tell
Yeah.
you that. Yeah. That's sort of the things I would recommend seasonally right now, those vitamins. And then I also recommend learning about adaptogens, certain mushrooms, exploring teas and tonics that can boost you up. Think about how much caffeine you're bringing in on a daily basis, which is huge for giving you energy, and it has medicinal benefits, no question. But we really have overdone the caffeine in our
Well,
society.
it's probably because we're so stressed
Yeah.
and not sleeping well, right? So we need that pick me up. Is there a kind of a universal tea that's really good for stress management that everyone can benefit from?
Well, I would pick herbs that are familiar to most people now, and that would be chamomile, which is a lovely tea. If you don't steep it too long, it gets really bitter if you steep it too long. A lovely evening tea, and it's great for kids. It's so benign on any level, and it's actually helpful for lots of issues people are having. So that would be number one. Number two would be lemon balm, especially now. Lemon balm, people think of it as, oh, that's just it's a mint and it smells like lemon. Its stem is square. That's how you identify a mint. And it's also antiviral. And a lot of people don't know that about lemon balm. If you have a hypothyroid, you don't want to drink lemon balm all the time because it can affect your thyroid over time. But it's an important thing to know about. And I like to add a little lemon balm to other herbs. And yeah, that and vitamin C. Vitamin C is huge for keeping away all kinds of colds and flus in itself. And so, how are you taking in vitamin C? You don't want to drink a lot of orange juice because there's so much sugar in it, and you can always dilute it. But bring in your citrus fruits. Yeah, they're from Florida. It's not seasonal, but it's the one thing I will never do without is lemons, limes, and tangerines or oranges in the winter. Because in Vermont, we're not getting enough vitamin D, which is another big one. So I love to say CBD. Remember CBD, not cannabis CBD, but vitamins. If you can keep those three in your life, at least this winter, you shouldn't get sick.
Well, what about CBD, cannabis for stress management,
Oh, it's huge.
hemp?
It's huge. And people don't know which way to go on it because they don't know how their cannabinoid system is going to react. We have these receptors. We all have different receptors that are awake at different stages of life. As you age, those receptors decline. I'm learning so much about that now. I'm just growing a little bit on my land, experiment with, but I have learned, which is fascinating. we're still at the very beginning of the rodeo show here on cannabis in general. But CBDA, which A stands for acid, if you can bring more of that in your life, it's actually way more powerful than just straight CBD for
So,
lots of things, for anxiety, pain, inflammation, insomnia, all those like four big things people go to CBD for.
so how do you get CBDA?
Well, it's the process of making a CBD tincture, oil, or lotion for topical requires a cold process. Once you heat the flower, it goes from CBDA to CBD. And they're finding all of these amazing things about non heated processing with the flower that is dried naturally, but it's not heated like decarboxylated as people do to create a different expression. The science they've done has shown that you need a lot more CBD to get some of the similar effects you can get on a lot less of CBDA.
Huh. Is CBDA even available out there in the
Yeah,
world?
I recommend looking at healer.com. Dustin Sulak, the doctor, I think he's an MD. Anyway, he's a phenomenal research scientist. Has done all this work. He's in Maine and he's just developed some product line that's completely transparent and he really helps you understand if you're not even going to buy his stuff what to look for when you're buying a product.
Ah,
And I found his work extremely helpful. And you want to be able to see the testing that's done on the product. The terpenes are there.
I've heard that you have to be very careful when you're shopping for
Oh,
CBD
yeah, the
products.
tests
Yeah.
they've done just on products in general have shown that some of them don't even have any CBD in it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So you really need a trusted source. And I think it's a miracle drug that we're all getting to know. But what we have been sort of bamboozled by over the last 40 or so years, whenever it became such a voodoo drug that no one should touch, it's a plant. It's plant medicine. And what I was not aware of is this cannabinoid system in my body that has these perfect receptors for this plant. And that, not that we all have to have cannabis, but okay, what are other plants that have these cannabinoid properties that boost our cannabinoid system, which is apparently critical for healthy living, a healthy body. So I'm wanting to learn a way more about that for my practice and helping people.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah,
Anything natural to help our systems,
and
I vote
trust
for.
and
Yeah.
trust. It's a big thing is the trust, and for me, it's really about helping people make their own medicine. You know, what can you do yourself because you're gonna have to trust what you're doing for yourself, right? So we have to do our homework and understand our bodies better and then trust what we come up with that to help it. And that can be
So we put that in
so
the back
many.
of our binder then,
Yeah.
the homework section. Yeah.
Yes. Collect those handouts. Remember those tips. We take in so little of what we learn really that we can apply to our lives. And I often feel like if I could just take this one thing and do it. So one of the things I like to recommend for people, even if they're in this unconscious habit lifestyle, is to take Sunday, if it's a spiritual day kind of thing, spiritual meaning focus on you and nobody else. Take part of one day a week and do a foot bath, take a bath, just do something that you feel really excited about for you and don't feel guilty about it. It's okay.
That's a great suggestion. I think one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're very stressed or just period is to spend some time in nature.
Yeah, no question.
Because if you're freaking out and you go hang out by a tree for 5 minutes or sit on a big boulder, a big stone, by some water, which we have plenty of here in Vermont, we're very fortunate, but you will not be the same when you leave 5 minutes later. There's just something magical. It's part of who we are, but unfortunately, I think we've really separated ourselves from the natural world.
I think that's such a huge statement, Wendy. If you do nothing else, I just take it for granted that people are doing some of that. We have parks, but maybe not.
Well, I think we're hamsters in a wheel, right? We
Yeah.
just get in our routines and we just do our routines. That's why I opened this wellness center because of the healing chamber. Because I believe I said this in the episode after you got in the machine.
Oh, right.
And
Wait.
yeah,
I interviewed you.
yeah,
Yeah.
the energy genesis episode where I said my very first experience during my session, I had periods where I experienced a complete absence of mental, emotional, and physical tension. And I'm a pretty chill girl at this point in my life, and to be able to have that, to realize that I was carrying a great deal of stress in my body, and I had no idea until I had an absence of it. And that's what really pointed out to me that we must all be doing this. We must all have this sort of baseline in our systems that we consider no stress, but it's actually a high degree of stress. It's just so chronic. We're so used to it, we don't realize it. And until you, again, have an absence of it, like you get into a sensory deprivation tank or you get into the energy genesis and you have this opportunity to relax your nervous system
Mm.
and experience that delicious relaxation,
Yeah.
it's quite startling to realize, wow, the only times we usually recognize stress is when it's spiking and our bodies are screaming at us, like I was saying before, through some sort of symptom like a migraine or insomnia or whatever. Or if there's some event that happens that's a
So,
really stressful event.
but are you saying when you go in the Genesis, it's like being in nature? It gives you the same.
Well, I think it's like relaxation on
Yeah.
steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally cheating getting in there because it's music and it's light. The frequencies of those things just calm your nervous system down very quickly. And
I
then
think everyone should experience it. It's truly amazing.
thank you for promoting that. No, I do too, man. That's why
It's just too bad every community doesn't have one at
I
their
know.
local library, where you can just say, "Hey, I'm going down there today to chill."
So funny. If I had a dime for every time somebody said, "I'm not getting out," I would have a lot of dimes.
That's another form of self-care is looking at what a Genesis machine can do for you.
And then getting back to breathing,
Hmm.
meditation practice, whatever form that might take. There are lots of different meditation apps out there now that people can take advantage of to really focus on their breath and bringing their focus inward.
I
Yoga.
I think it's really hard though to just jump into meditation if you haven't figured out a way to reduce your anxiety a little bit. Not that there's
Are you speaking from experience?
yes.
Yeah.
Because if your mind is going all the time, it's really, really hard to train yourself to do meditation.
Well, I'm a hypocrite because I don't meditate. So, but I'm suggesting it. I take that back. The shamanic trance work I do is a very intense form of meditation. It happens to be highly entertaining
Wait,
and helpful.
you're going to have to explain what that word just was. Shamanic transform.
Well, going into an altered state with the
Mm.
sound of a drum or a rattle beat so that you can access these inner worlds.
And everyone has to experience that. That's what indigenous people have done for centuries with sound. It's just that we play music with our earphones, right? To help us chill. A lot of people are totally into certain music, but there's a frequency of popular music, I'm told, that can affect you physically differently than a different kind of frequency that maybe you're talking about with the drumming.
Well, yeah, the classic shamanic drum beat is 4 to 7 beats per second, and it puts your brain into a dominant theta brainwave, which is when you're sleeping and in theta, you're dreaming. And when you're awake and in theta, you can vision. And that drum beat helps to entrain your brain so you can get there to that state pretty quickly and then have these really cool meditative visionary experiences.
Yes, and that's what you did when we were with those employees, right?
Yeah,
It
I
it
pulled
was
out the
only
rattle, yeah.
just a
And the
20-minute session, but everybody responded so positively. was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, we're wired. It's in our DNA to be able to do this. Like you were saying, we all come from shamanic traditions if you go back far enough. So the ability to vision like this is within us. And that is I say this frequently, it's my not so secret wish that everyone become their own shaman.
And that's a huge goal for any of us who can't meditate.
Yeah, this is an alternative.
It sounds like a wonderful alternative to me. And does it have to be done in a group, or can it be on
Oh,
your own?
well, a shamanic practice is typically a very individualistic practice. It's nice to do it with a group of people, though. It
Yeah.
is really nice to do it that way. But that's another practice you can experiment with. I'm a big fan of experimentation to try different things to see what works for you. It's not a one size fits all, as you pointed out with your binder example. You got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I think just continue to remain curious for yourself. Don't get stuck in a rut.
Well, and just know that there are things out there that can help you
Yeah.
through diet, through
Herbs, through getting a coach if you need, the accountability, or just recognizing what you can't do and what you can do, and start chipping away at what you can do. Because so much of the stress we're in are things we can't control. So focus on what you have instead of what you don't have. Think more about controlling what you can and not what you can't,
well,
because it's not going to do any good.
that's a question you can ask yourself too, is what do I actually have control of?
Yeah.
That's a question I ask in the stress management workshops that I've done, because stress, anxiety, and control are bedmates. So there's a direct link between your relationship with control and how stressed you are.
Yeah,
We have a whole bunch of control of very few things,
that's right.
and all of those things are internal.
And you do have a choice of how you respond. You can,
Tricky though.
yeah. If you do more self reflection about the way you respond and realize you can change that, it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Well, I think the important thing to point out here is that to change your relationship with stress, I think the very first thing that needs to happen is that you have to have the desire to do it, because it's going to take some work.
No question.
Yeah. And I think that's true with anything. It's well worth the energy. If you think about how much energy you put into being stressed, like if you were able to capture the amount of energy and put it in a container,
Wow.
yeah, you would probably power your house.
That's right. No question.
No, so if you shift that energy
Hmm.
that you're spending worrying about shit, living in the future, wondering what's going to happen, living in the past, getting pissed about what already happened, if you just take like a fraction of that energy you put into all of those unhealthy practices and move it towards taking care of yourself.
And that's grounding. That's grounding yourself when you start doing that. That's what root vegetables do too. They help ground you, because we're all out there with our thoughts, and that's why nature helps us so much, because it grounds us to who we really are and that we're part of the planet.
We are nature.
Yeah.
So do you have any other final thoughts or tips?
Oh, just learn to love yourself unconditionally. It's
That's
but
easy.
yeah. Yeah, put a little sticky on your mirror in the bathroom that says "I love you,"
That's a great idea.
and that's where I'll leave it today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show again, Marie.
Oh, I so enjoyed it. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Wendy. I learned so much, and we have fun together.
We do have fun, and it's always enlightening. I learn some new things, and we talk all the time.
Well, we need to talk more, that's all.
I guess we do. Yeah. Well, I hope this has been helpful for folks, because this is a absolutely insane time on planet Earth, and chances are we're not through the insanity yet. So please, please, please do what you can to take really good care of yourself.
Indeed.
Well, there you have it. I really do hope you found a useful tidbit or two in our conversation. I sure did. In fact, based on this conversation, I decided to start carrying Healer CBD and CBDA products at Lucid Path Wellness. It's impressive and powerful medicine. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. One of the easiest ways you can support Lucid Cafe is to subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode, and I've got some really good ones coming up. Until next time, take care.